Hello and welcome to another modern constructed video series here on MTGCardmarket.com. Today we're going to play some more with Izzet Delver. I reworked the deck quite a bunch since the last video, similar to what I already talked about in the wrap-up session last time. Let's go over the deck list real quick before we hop into another competitive league to see how the new version does. So first of all, I went down to 3 Thing in the Ice. First of all, to fit the Swift Spears, we have to cut back on some of the other non-Delver flip, non-Bedlam Reveler cards, like non-instant, non-sorcery cards basically. And double Thing in the Ice can be kind of awkward because, you know, the second one kind of makes the first worse because it takes longer to flip, and also like late in the game when our hand is empty in grindy games, drawing one can be a bit lackluster. So I figured going down to 3 makes a lot of sense here. I also cut down to 2 Revelers and 2 Snapcaster Mages. It's still possible that 3 Revelers is fine, but I think if we would run a third Reveler, we would have to cut the second Snapcaster, and I think the second Snapcaster is probably better than the third Reveler, just because of how awkward drawing 2 Revelers at the same time is before we get to cast the first one, and there's some matchups where you like have to hold on to the counter spells fairly long, where Reveler like sits in your hand and waits, has to wait until you use your counter magic and might not even like be relevant. And Snapcaster Mage is also a really good card that is a 2 for 1, while Reveler often is a 3 or 4 for 1, but less like flexible and also does not provide specific answers, while Snapcaster can provide answers to a specific problem. So that's the split that I went with. We have 4 Swift Spears, as mentioned in the wrap-up, to try and go more aggressive and utilize the card refuel ability from Bedlam Reveler better. While we also go more aggressive, I decided to try some main deck Spell Pierce, which is especially good against the card Liliana, which is pretty problematic if you don't run a young Pyromancer potentially. So being able to, for example, drop a Thing in the Ice and protect it with Spell Pierce is really sweet. Or for example on the draw, play a 1-mana spell on turn 2 and pass with Spell Pierce up. Or just Spell Pierce cards against various spell heavy combo decks, fight back against counter magic and stuff like that. Spell Pierce is just a fairly flexible and very mana efficient card that plays well with the tempo and proactive nature of the deck, and is also a counter that can be used on a lot of cards, so it usually doesn't sit in our hand to keep us from efficiently using Bedlam Reveler. It's usually just like blown early to generate some tempo and trade 1 for 1, and is either useless or gone by the time we want to cast our Bedlam Reveler, so there's no tension between those cards, which is nice. I still have the one Izzet Charm, because I think it's just a nice, versatile catch-all type thing. I think I didn't have one last time. I think I might have had a third, I had a third Forked Bolt and an Izzet Charm, I think. Yeah, I also cut down to 2 Forked Bolts to make room for the changes. And I think one Izzet Charm is probably better than the third Forked Bolt because it's more versatile and can even cycle through excess lands in the late game, making it a virtual card draw since the lands often have no value at all. That's it for the main deck. In the sideboard, I want to try various things. I added a Deprive over the second negate to see how well it works, especially now with only 2 Revelers. I think Deprive is probably gonna work pretty well because we can afford better to return a land in like the mid game without it hurting us. And it's just a better counter than negate. I could even see running 2 deprive and 0 negate. I also have 1 threats, which is another nice card against Jund. Also good against Suicide and various company decks with voice. It's probably better than running a second Magma Spray, but still helps at taking care of annoying Voice of Resurgence, while coming in handy in various other matchups as well. We still have the Surgical Extractions for Dredge. Most things stayed the same, except that I added the third Bedlam Reveler to the sideboard, since even though I only have 1/2 in the main deck at the moment, I think there's a few matchups where the third is really good. Most notably matchups like Jund, that are very grindy, where you just want good top decks, and this is one of the best top decks you can have in that matchup. So I think having extra ones in the sideboard makes a lot of sense, and it's one of the better cards aside from probably Pia and Kiranala. But I think this is just fitting the deck better because it's cheaper and also potentially has more raw power. So I wanted one for Jund and similar matchup. So basically if the matchup plays grindy, you want to bring it in, be it Abzan or Jund, probably even decks like Nahiri Jeskai would have to play that matchup to see if we have an empty hand often enough for the third to be good. But I can certainly imagine that. Alright, I think that's it for the deck list. Everything else has been explained in the article or in the last video. If there is any unclarity, either go back to those to check or ask me in the comments. Let's hop into the competitive league and play some games to see how the deck fares. Alright, see you in a moment for the games.